Hi, I'm Elisabeth Dawson, and you are listening to our show and watching our show, Ways to Love Your Money. And so this was inspired by our book, Wealth by Design, that I actually wrote about a year and a half ago. Very happy with what's happening here because the education that people are looking for in a simple solution to hear some knowledge and education, as long as they take the time in an hour or less, they're going to get some great knowledge. One of the things I want to talk about today, it really has to do with real estate agents in general, mortgage brokers in general, because today they're working in a very singular environment. They're working on what's important to get their consumer, their client, into that home that they want to purchase or that mortgage that they need to have to purchase that home. And it's very interesting because most people think that they can do this all by themselves. But you can go to a bank and you can go to a mortgage person at a bank, but they're still going to go through the transaction. There's still going to be compensation paid. So I encourage you with the interview that we're going to have today with our expert real estate agent, Jonathan Olow. He's a true advisor, and what I have seen over the years with mortgage people in general, real estate people in general, they know that they have to work together. But one thing that is a huge missing link for them is the work that they actually should be doing with the financial advisor that's very comprehensive in their approach. Because your client needs to look great on paper. You as a consumer listening to this show, you need to look good on paper. If that paper doesn't look good, we're not going to get underwritten for a loan, even if we, begged, right? So as money gets a little tighter in the lending market right now, even though they open up opportunities where interest rates have come down again, and there's a little bit more of a frenzy for people to do some refinancing, but the Federal Reserve Board dictates what those interest rates are going to be. So most people think that, gosh, it's going to go back to the 80s or the 90s, and we're going to have interest rates in the double digits, if not, at the highest point in 1980, you could have had a bad mortgage close between 18 and 21%. That is so hard to fathom, but so many people have that fear that we're going to go into these higher interest rate mortgages. Once again, well, for the last several years, 11 to be exact, we've seen interest rates at the lowest we have in historical measure. So if that's the case, what is that doing? If we have really low interest rates on our mortgages, well, you may love your house and want to stay in it, but you may also be in a position where you might need to grow and you need to have a bigger home because your family's getting bigger. Or maybe you want to get smaller because you're getting closer to retirement and you don't want to have, the large acreage of property like what I have, and you want to kind of, downsize a little bit. It's all about what you're personally in tune with. And I can tell you from a perspective of a financial advisor, especially when my clients want to buy a piece of property or multiple pieces of property, if they don't look good on paper, and what do I mean look good on paper? If their debt is too high, it's not going to work. If they have anything wrong with their credit report, it's not going to work. If they haven't even looked at the cash flow, it's going to, they're going to need to be able to, number one, come up with a down payment if they don't have a house that they're selling to buy a new one. But then the second thing is what that payment is going to be to them. Is it more or less than what they were paying before? Can they afford it? Do they have the cash flow to do it? See, when we had the interest rate frenzy several years ago when interest rates were, 3%, maybe even some lower, people would tell me, oh yeah, I'm refinancing my home because I'm going to save $1,000 a month on my mortgage payment. Well, that's great, but if you just were at a 20 years left on your mortgage and you just did another 30-year mortgage and you're going to save $1,000 a month, what did you really do here? You just added another 10 years to that loan, and now that $1,000 per month that you were saving, any amount of money that you were saving, I ask people, where do you put the money? Where is it to show me that you're saving it? And pretty much 100% of the time, no one is saving it. Guess what they're doing with it? They're enhancing their lifestyle. The scenario that I gave you is someone that I knew, in basically about 10 years ago when the market frenzy went down with interest rates going so low, they did the refinance. They saved $1,000 a month, and then they come to the end of the year and they're freaking out, even though this is a conversation I already had with them. They're freaking out because now they have a huge tax bill. So Why? Well, they didn't have as much mortgage interest to deduct any longer because they were trying to pay down their house faster, and they went to a 3% mortgage and they hardly had any interest, and now they're saving $1,000 a month. Well, this $1,000 a month that they're saving, guess what they had to do? They had to start saving that to pay their taxes. So the reality here is that we're going to pay someone. It's either the mortgage company or it's going to be, the government. And who would you rather pay? Obviously, do not extend yourself to the point where you cannot afford what you're doing, but work with a financial advisor that is comprehensive in this approach, that doesn't have a problem talking about real estate and real estate transactions with mortgage brokers and real estate agents, because then you're going to be a lot more stable versus having so much anxiety by the time, escrow closes and wondering, how in the world am I going to pay this payment? Or how in the world am I going to be able to pay for my utilities and my trash and my, gas and electric and, sewage? How am I going to do all those things? So many times, and I've seen this time and time again, especially where we are in this marketplace today, that homes are very high priced. They're purchasing homes maybe that are a little bit more than their comfort zone, but they're not working with a financial, advisor to kind of look through their cash flow to see, how can I make this really work? Because, oh my gosh, if we have another economic decline, which everyone thinks we will, we just don't know when. We don't have the crystal ball. I should have a crystal ball on the show so I can look into it and see what I see, but that's just not who I am. But we don't have the crystal ball to know when the day is going to happen, when the market is going to decline. It could be, in 2008 and also 2000, 2001, 2002, when the stock market went down, the real estate market went down. The banking industry became so tight with their money. And so the only people that could actually take advantage of that time of their lives for opportunity for real estate or whatever it might have been were the only ones that had liquid cash. And they looked at their finances. They looked at how to navigate through this, and they had a professional advisor to help them out with that. Because you can't just have all your money in a retirement account. And you can't just have all your money, paying down your mortgage. And you can't just have money, paying for a, very expensive mortgage that doesn't have, the viability that it's going to be successful. I just spoke to another client last week, and when they were first introduced to me about 5-6 years ago, they went through this whole piece where they were trying to get ready for retirement, and they used, the wife's 403B at work, and she had now retired from work. They used that 403B to basically liquidate $250,000 to pay for and pay off their home mortgage. Well, big problem. Guess what? Paid off their mortgage, but then they went and did their taxes. It's a big problem. They weren't talking to an advisor. They were doing things on their own. And they went to time to go do their taxes. Now their taxes were more than $125,000 that they had to pay that year. And where were they going to get the money? Well, they had to go back to the mortgage company, get another mortgage to basically pay off the taxes now that they owe the government. Everything is a strategy out there, folks. You want to make sure that you're doing everything to the best efficient, tax efficient, profitability efficient, the best standard possible to be able to create your wealth, grow your wealth, keep your wealth. Again, it's about making as much money as we can, have a better relationship with it, know where every dollar and cent goes, but how to recover that dollar and keep that dollar versus just paying it to financial institutions, banks, your lifestyle, and ultimately the government. So hold on to your money, keep it tight, but again, get smart, get advice. Thanks for listening, and I hope you stay tuned for our next guest, Mr. Jonathan Olow, who is our resident real estate expert advisor, and we just can't wait to hear what he has to say today.
I am Jonathan Olow with the Olow Real Estate Group, and I put together a really great article on the 5 biggest mistakes sellers and buyers make when they start either looking to start buying a property or looking to put their property on the market. So if you're in a conversation with somebody or a friend or a colleague from work that talks about that they were going to start looking for a property to buy or talking about selling, I can get you a copy of this, The 5 Biggest Mistakes That Sellers and Buyers Make. You can reach out to me at 619-823-9900. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elisabeth Dawson, and we have our show here, Ways to Love Your Money. Our resident expert real estate guest, Jonathan Olow, who's a partner with the show, is here with us today. And I think that you're going to hear some, just great pieces. He wants to kind of talk a little bit about, what's happening with the market when people ask you. So those are some of the questions that you were talking to me about that you wanted to introduce, and especially maybe even with first-time buyers, or if it's people that are seasoned in the real estate world. So what do you say when someone asks you, well, how about the real estate market? What do you think about that right now?
Well, interesting that you asked that question, because it comes up all the time. And my answer as a trained consultant is to basically say, well, experience shows that the market is what's going on in your neighborhood. And I think that it's very important for people to understand that you need to know what homes are on the market, what homes have sold, how many days those properties have been on the market in your specific neighborhood, because I'm sure that it's important to you to have good information, timely information, and wouldn't that be something that you'd want, Elisabeth?
Oh, 100%.
So,
and I think that's why we always talk about these things, because people are worried because, 2008 happened, and gosh, should I buy more real estate now? Is the market still going up? Is the market going to go down? Are we going to have another big crash? And I think that what happens is when there's maybe someone that's just more of like a real estate agent that's just trying to sell that house to make a compensation, the difference between that and a true real estate advisor such as yourself, which is so much more powerful, because knowing the facts about the area that they want to be in, the history, what's going on with it, truly, is it the best financial decision for them to make, or what do they do? Yeah. So how do people work with you in that sense?
Well, I'll go back to the question. Most people ask that question because you're at a party, you're at some event,
Sure.
they may not even know what to say because
Yeah.
they know you're a real estate agent, and they blatantly just out there say, how's the market, just because it's something to break the ice. And when you do get very specific and say, Elisabeth, well, tell me where you live, and I'd be happy to research these properties for you.
Sure.
Because most people, when they say, how's the market, from the outside world, they think, how's the market in San Diego? But it's not that. It really is about, they're really asking the question, how is the market for me? Most agents, and I'll call them traditional agents, will say, oh, it's good, it's bad, it's picking up, because that's how their business is being conducted.
Right.
So you're not giving you the correct answer, because the correct answer is, how's the market for you? And when we get deeper into a consultation, then we're going to find out what's motivating you, what's important to you, about why is the market important, because it may drill down to, Elisabeth, just refinance your home. You love where you live, and sure, that's not a deal for me, but in the big picture, I'm giving you the right information to say it might be the right time to stay because you love your home. Go get a construction loan, or maybe go get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, and do the little remodel that you love and that you want.
Right.
So when people do say, how's the market, again, it always comes up, at any event. People, I don't even have to walk in and say, hey, let's talk about real estate, because it just happens.
Right.
So,
well, I think it's really important that you phrase that question, what's the market for you, versus what's the market like in general, because there's always fear associated with, making the right decision. I remember my father, which I know you worked with my father a couple years ago and have done that a few times, but I know in his situation, he was just like, wow, gosh, I think I want to just make a really good financial decision, and based on the market of what he thought. And even since, we've seen that the value of his home has gone up in the last 3 years. And he thought, gosh, I just didn't even think it was going to make money. But there's always so much fear that gets in people's way. You have to have a home to live in, right? You have to have a home of some kind. Whether you rent, and that might be liberating to you, or whether you want to purchase a home, or whether you have a second home, or whether you have, investment property that you want to own or sell. It's just having that relationship with knowing that I'm living here, I'm enjoying the home, I'm paying my own mortgage versus I'm paying someone else's mortgage by renting. But at the same time, just embracing, whatever's going to come. What you put into anything, you get so much more out of.
Well, and because we work together with, many of our clients,
Right.
hand in hand, so we can give them the best advice. It may end up being that, you have somebody that wants to talk about a refi. I end up,
Right.
doing my consultation, and we come together and go,
Yeah.
they hate where they live.
Right.
A refi is not
Right.
going to make them happy. Their,
Right.
their mortgage payment might go down $50, but they're still, living next to whomever or
Right,
whatever,
right.
and they need to get out of it. Or they decide that, I think a refi is the best option for them, and we work together on that.
Well, and I
so.
think that goes without saying that it is more of a relationship build that you work on with people when you work with them, because you're looking at their financial situation. You're looking at, because I'm helping provide a little bit of that, but at the same time, you're looking at, can they feasibly afford that? Are they in the place that they want to be in? Would it be too much stress for them to move? Because there's a lot of emotional pieces that go with this. But real estate is it's the American dream. Everyone wants to own it.
Yeah.
And there's conversation that we can have about how fast to pay it off or not, and the tax benefits, this, that, or the other. But I think also it's kind of interesting, because I was talking with my daughter over the weekend, and her and her significant other, not married yet, but at the same time that's okay. They're talking about wanting to possibly purchase a property, and I go, well, that's great, because it's kind of my thought and process for them too, because hey, it's better to buy, especially what you're paying for rent, than to continue to pay that rent for someone else to have it. But I'm also a part of capitalism too, where I have investment property, and I love the fact that someone else might be paying my mortgage at times, and there's a win in a you have to understand the difference of doing business on both sides.
Yeah.
So, but I always appreciate what your perspective is, because that's a question I get all the time too about how is the market?
Yeah. Well, and you were saying, with your father, where people are, what news they watch, what influence they
Right.
have is also because they're coming at me going, well, how's the market? And I could answer blankly, oh, it's doing fantastic.
Right.
And they're like, well, I just saw 3 properties,
Right.
go into foreclosure down the street. Well, they're getting someone else's perspective. And again,
Sure.
it's that agent that might be on TV and saying, oh, the market's going to crash, or it's going to, you have that aspect, the financial, but you also have, my tagline is healthy, wealthy living.
Right.
So we're looking at this big picture, and the financial is a portion of it, but you may have a family, you may not have a family, you may have dog kids, all those things that are in your
Right.
life.
Right.
But financial is, I'm not saying it's a small part, but it's just a piece of the pie
Sure.
that completes it. So if you need to be, if you need to move or want to move, or how that market is, you're going to bring those things into consideration and try to balance it.
Sure.
Just like if you're going to go to a therapist, it's not your partner or your husband or wife's problem. It's you need to work on these issues in order to get to the next step.
Right.
And for my clients, sometimes they're a year or two away, and I say, okay, here's the things we need to do. Go make an appointment with Elisabeth. Let's start saving. Let's do these things to put you in the best position that you can.
Well, and we talk about this all the time, about making sure that we look good on paper so that you can afford what you want to afford. I know that, having certain kinds of debts, there's good debt and there's bad debt, right? There's good cash flow and not so good cash flow. But at the same time, making sure that you do the math and you look at with the proper mortgage consultant advisor too, that helps them out with this, because I think people know that they can do a lot of these things on their own, but without the real proper education and advice to get it done the right way, so that they can afford to have the property, afford to keep the property, and not have fear if the economy changes, that they can have their home, because their own personal home is their own personal economics.
And there's always going to be a risk. And even if somebody says now's the time to buy, or even refinance, because I just learned about a program that they have in refinancing that I always, I've been in real estate 25 some years and have done tons of refinance, but 15 years ago, not the NEGAM, but there is the loan that's a 5-year or 10-year.
Right,
and you get
those
in
arms.
really the arms.
Yeah.
You get in at a really low interest rate.
Right.
Well, what's interesting, they aren't low interest rates anymore. They're running the same as a 30-year loan, because I thought, okay, let's have this client do a 5-year, because if you know you're going to move,
Sure.
because the average time of moving now, it used to be 3 to 5 years for like first-time buyers. It's now 7 to 9 years.
Wow.
It's a little bit longer. So, then we can advise them, what kind of loan do you want to get into?
Right.
But, now learning that those 5-year ARMs and 7-year ARMs are pretty much the 30, well, then why not get into a 30 at 4.5 or 4.25 or 4.75?
Right.
And because then if
Yeah.
you do keep that property and use it as an investment vehicle,
Sure.
it's already got a loan in place.
Right,
But if
right.
you know you're going to take that property and flip it, take the equity and move to the next property, it might be best to look at those options for loans.
And so many people think that interest rates are going to go up, but they're still at
they're-
historically low levels.
Correct.
Historically low
I
levels.
mean, even 6 or 7% is still. And again, if they would meet with you and a tax advisor, you'd learn that
Right.
having some of that good debt
Yes.
is something that you can write off. And now we have these new tax rules of, the $10,000 per year max. Well, people on the East Coast and the West Coast, it doesn't work very well for them because
Right.
we're talking about a $400,000 property and
Right.
you've already maxed out.
So speaking of the market, what do you think the average median home is right now in San Diego?
In San Diego, I haven't run that in a while, but it's probably around 475, 525 around that.
So still buyers can actually be out there at 475, 500,000 and still get a home.
Yeah.
Whether it's
But
a
again-
condo, whether it's a house.
Yeah,
or-
and again, that's average. So you're talking condos that could
Right.
be 80,000, then
Right.
you have a multi-million dollar property in
Yes.
Rancho Santa Fe or.
Well, true. I mean, even some of these homes, they just still keep going up in value.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Certain areas, they still keep
Yeah.
going up in value, and it's just even new areas that you would have never thought would have
Yeah.
started to gain that kind of traction.
Well, and right now we're seeing that there's more buyers that are coming out, and we don't have as many listings.
Okay.
So you're still going to have that about equal, where the buyers and sellers are pretty much at equal stance.
Okay.
It used to be where the sellers, 6 months ago, a year, 2 and 3 years ago, the sellers were in control, where you're going to
Okay.
get the multiple offers. Now we still get multiple offers,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't happen as often because properties are actually, if you price it right, it's going to go in 5 days. If you're testing
Yeah.
the market
Yeah.
and you're throwing it out there and you put it on the market, it could sit 30,
Sure.
60, 90
Well,
days.
people are still buying $1 million homes or bigger.
Correct.
I mean, or they're buying the $400,000 or $500,000 home.
Correct.
It's just about what suits them and their personal time in life right now. I was even talking to some people, some friends that I know that, they're getting to a place where they want to just start selling their investment property. If there's enough inventory for all the buyers coming in, great. But if they're, when the inventory starts to either get higher or get lower, it's going to change the way a buyer can actually, get involved in that.
Yeah, and rents going up and all that.
Right.
I mean, where they just continue
Right.
will go up. But on that note that you were saying that, should you keep it again, yeah, you might be making $500 a month,
Yeah.
over your mortgage payment, but then there's a quality of life of, are you going to pay a property management company or are you going to do it yourself? Are you
Right.
going to add another little, monkey or gorilla on your back
I
that you
know.
might say, do I really want to deal with
Right.
renters?
Right.
So.
Well, I know we could talk about the subject all day long, and
Well,
that's
then
why
let's
we
do it.
always do.
4-hour segment today.
4-hour segment, yeah.
Where's the wine?
Where's the wine? Yes, we need it. I know. So I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm always grateful that you're here every month, and I just think that perspective for people to listen to what you have to say and how we kind of work together and things like this, it's an impact because there needs to be more perspective out there for people, and I think education, knowledge, know your surroundings, know where you want to be, and get the facts. Because if you're just doing something off your heartstrings and you haven't really gone through the steps to figure out all the details about the location you want to be in, then you're not doing your homework either. So, and it's one of the biggest financial decisions that people make. It is, whether it's to buy or to sell. So anyway, with that, I want to say thank you so much to Jonathan Olow. It's always a pleasure to have him here on the show, Ways to Love Your Money. And if you need to reach out to him in any way, please give us a call. You know the number, 619-640-2622. I'm sure you've heard Jonathan's information as well. But if you have questions that you want to ask Jonathan, which I think would be powerful to ask about this topic because it's so, so important, reach out. Reach out to questions with an S at Elisabeth with an S, Dawson.com. He would love to answer your questions, and obviously he'll be back here next month. So thanks so much. Stay tuned. We'll be back here shortly with another episode. Hi, it's Elizabeth. I just wanted to mention to you, we would love your feedback and understand how you're feeling about the show. Are we giving you the content that you want to hear? Is there something that you might have a question about? If you've got a question, please don't keep it a secret. Email us at questions with an S at Dawson.com. We'd love to know what you have to ask us and give you some feedback back so that you have some knowledge to move forward and be more successful. The information provided in this show is for informational and educational purposes only. This show is not investment advice, nor is it intended to address the financial needs of any particular viewer. The opinions expressed on this show are not intended to be an endorsement of any particular investment strategy or service of any other kind. You must make an independent decision regarding investments or strategies mentioned throughout the show. Before acting on information in this show, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular situation and strongly consider seeking advice from a financial advisor.